We're called the lucky country. But the country we are is built on more than just luck. It's built on heroes and heart, explorers, builders, and the brave. Our country has been forged in war and peace, discovery and invention, adversity and triumph. This is the greatest story of all, because this is our story. Welcome to Australia, the story of us. Australians have walked this land for at least 50,000 years. In every corner of our great continent, the oldest continuous cultures on Earth have drawn their stories. But the Australia we know today would be impossible without something that happened just over 200 years ago. Before a bridge unifies a nation, and an architectural masterpiece divides it. The British arrive with almost 800 convicts, their guards, and plans to stay. But their story nearly ends when it's barely begun. June 26, 1790, Sydney. Just 2 years since those first ships, the British penal colony is on the verge of starvation. Supplies brought from England are rotting and running out. The convicts and their jailers can't grow or gather enough to feed themselves. 6 desperate men have already hanged for stealing food.
Britain's priority was to get rid of these convicts. I mean, the hulks were full, the prisons were full. There'd been a revolution kind of fermenting away in France. You know, they were worried. And getting rid of the people was the most important thing. What happened to them when they got there was perhaps a secondary consideration.
See if there's any meat today.
Hopefully. After last time there weren't much.
Convict James Ruse, sentenced to 7 years for stealing 2 silver watches. Hungry,
Another bag of corn, please.
and like everyone else in the prison colony, desperate for an English supply ship to save him.
See you next time.
Flag! Flag! The flag!
At last, the King's colours fly high on the Surprise as she glides into Sydney Harbour. One of 6 boats in the Second Fleet, she's been at sea for 6 months. The colonists believe the fleet brings food, seed, and people to help grow the colony. Salvation is here. James Ruse has fallen for Elizabeth Parry, banished to Sydney for stealing clothes. The ship's arrival raises their hopes of forging a better life together in Australia.
I think James and Elizabeth Ruse being given the opportunity to reinvent themselves, it just shows that we are the country for reinvention. It started way back then and we're still continuing to do it now.
But Elizabeth and James's dreams collide with a brutal reality. The Surprise and the ships that follow unload the sick and the dying. It'll be known as the Death Fleet. Of the 1,000 convicts who set out, more than 300 die. Most of the survivors are too sick to walk, let alone save the colony. The Second Fleet wasn't the British Navy. The transportation job was given to contractors better known for running African slave ships.
The Second Fleet was an absolute catastrophe. The vessels arrived with convicts starving, dying of scurvy. Many of them were taken out of the hold and died upon reaching the fresh air. It was an absolute tragic situation.
Now James Ruse must act. Back in Cornwall, he was a farmer before burglary brought him to Australia. He thinks he can show the rest of the colony how to farm and survive here.
He is the only farmer. He has some skills. He goes to the governor and says, if you give me some land, I'm going to start a farm and I'm going to show people how to become farmers.
The governor gives Ruse seed, convict labourers and land near Parramatta, west of Sydney. Ruse sees that the soil is poor. He burns the bush, a first for Europeans in Australia. He uses the ash to fertilise the land, a trick he learnt as a farm boy. He hopes it's the key to growing Australia's first successful crop of corn. What the British see as a new land is actually ancient. Australian soils have been leached of their nutrients over millions of years. For the Europeans, the seasons are back to front. They can't read the weather, and they're trying to grow crops never before planted on our continent.
Oh no.
There's nothing here.
What's happened? It's all ruined.
There's nothing.
James and Elizabeth's first crop of corn fails.
If they couldn't produce a successful crop, it's failure and death. Really, if they weren't able to farm the land, to harness the energy, the natural resources that were here, it meant death.
But they refuse to give up. From the shriveled cobs, they harvest just enough seed to sow one more crop. The convicts work the land even harder. They dig in compost and what's left of their failed crop. In England, James would plant corn in spring. Now he tries something radical, planting all his seed in the Australian winter. Where he comes from, winter means reliable rain. At first, the fertilised soil nourishes a promising new crop.
Oh, we need water.
Quickly.
But this winter is cruel. It brings an Australian drought. James and Elizabeth struggle to save their thirsty crop. Without a downpour, the corn is doomed, the colony in danger of collapse.
It's no use.
And then, when all seems lost, the heavens open. Their corn flourishes. They become the first colonists to feed themselves, paving the way for the family farms that will transform Australia.
James Ruse is the father of agriculture in Australia. He is the man who shows how to do it, where to do it, and what will do best.
The Ruse's first farm now lies beneath the city of Parramatta. From what they started, we now feed ourselves and more than 60 million people worldwide. Never again will the colony starve, but it remains a tiny outpost at the edge of a vast continent and ways of life stretching back tens of thousands of years. Coming up, goannas the size of buses, 2-ton wombats, and a marsupial lion with claws capable of tearing a man in two. This is Australia 45,000 years ago. In the age of the megabeasts, who will survive? When a hunter takes on Australia's most fearsome mammal.
What I want. We're Jack Daniels. The loudest, liveliest, luckiest, riskiest whiskey from Lynchburg, Tennessee.
The Holden 2019 plate clearance is now on. Right now, the 2019 plate Holden Arcadia comes with an incredible 7 years free scheduled servicing. Arrive with confidence, knowing you got this.
Oh, bog day.
It's parked.
We've got a...
Parked!
The powerful Amarok V6 Canyon, now with a 1.99% annual rate.
Snack time, lunchtime, halftime, full time, downtime, showtime, prime time, anytime, daytime, nighttime, springtime, summertime, dinner time, bedtime, rest time, mealtime.
Eggs. They're nutritious, delicious and great every day. So get cracking, Australia.
The Darling Downs, Queensland. 45,000 years ago. From here to what will be called Margaret River in the west, megabeasts roam. Goannas bigger than ewes. 2-ton wombats. A bird over 3 meters tall with claws to match and football-sized eggs. And a meat-eating marsupial, mean enough to kill them all. People live here too. And today, the hunter is hungry. His family depends on him to survive. His country is drying up. Food is harder to find. And he's not the only predator looking for a kill. The first Australians come here at least 50,000 years ago. Sea levels are lower, but coming to Australia by boat is humans' longest sea voyage so far.
You know, there really was an Aboriginal Captain Cook. There really was a first person to put their footprints on this continent.
45,000 years ago, the Earth is cooling and Australia is drying up. Rivers and lakes evaporate. Half of all species will die out. Only the fittest will survive. The hunter is locked on, stalking kangaroos. His spear is light and lethal from up to 30 meters. It's the most advanced javelin technology in the world. But the hunter's most potent weapon is knowledge, passed down over hundreds of generations.
Through their stories, Aboriginal people learned how to respect the land. They tell us how to eat from the land, to how to live from the land.
With all his know-how and skill, the hunter creates one chance. Something spooks the kangaroos. And a new hunt is about to begin. Australia's own marsupial lion. The world's deadliest carnivorous mammal. Its 8-centimetre claws will tear the guts out of any animal or human. It has jaws like bolt cutters. This death machine weighs in at over 90 kilos. The lion has one more deadly trick in its arsenal. This killer cat can also climb trees. Despite its fearsome power, for now, the marsupial lion goes hungry. His species struggles to survive across the drying continent. All the megabeasts are under pressure. They need massive amounts to eat, and Australia is becoming the parched land we know today. Food is running out. The first Australians survived by making the most of every opportunity. While men hunt, women and children gather plants, small animals, and fish. Fewer creeks and billabongs are available to people and animals. For the second time today, they clash. Today, this Australian family is safe.
They would have had to evolve and educate themselves to get better at the ways of surviving, otherwise they would have died off. And we know that they didn't die off because I'm still sitting here in front of you, and it's an inspiring story.
The sheer fact that people could develop a culture and live in the most inhospitable conditions has said to Australians, we can do this. We won't be beaten. There is possible life here on the driest continent on Earth.
Around 40,000 years ago, the megabeasts die out. Indigenous Australians thrive. For at least 5,000 years, they trade with outsiders from Asia. But the British colony changes everything. Coming up, Australia's first global export comes from an unlikely source.
Bigger than the mining industry today that was exporting seal skins.
And sparks a trade war against American invaders.
You yucky dog!
What I want.
Hey, what's up?
Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it,
Sup? That's what's up.
Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it, sip it up. Pop it, shot, mix it,
Sup? That's what's up. Sup?
She left here at 10 to go to the parade, but she never got there.
Did you find something?
You have no idea.
You reckon she's been snatched?
You can't hide something like that.
Can you unravel the acclaimed BBC mystery?
It's none of your damn business.
A girl
has gone missing, and people are looking for someone to blame.
Mayday, streaming for free on 7+.
October 17, 1804. Cape Barren Island, Bass Strait. American sealers are waging Australia's first trade war. The colony in Sydney is branching out. Its ships explore the coast, establishing new settlements and new industries. But the Americans are muscling in. Captain Joseph Morrell, survivor of the Death Fleet, pioneer of colonial Australia's first big business. He's about to risk his life for his livelihood, to defend a rich resource from American poachers.
The Americans are the new kids on the block. They're newly independent as a nation, and they're starting to look around and see what there is to be had. And so they're turning up on the coast of Australia and even nosing their way around into Bass Strait. And they're finding what we're finding, which is a massive amount of seals just asking to be made into money.
Along the southern coast of Australia, gangs of ex-convicts slaughter vast herds of seals. Before iron ore, before gold, before wool, we export seal pelts and seal oil to the world.
I've sailed across Bass Strait, and most Aussies don't realise that in around about 1805 there was this incredible industry there that was in effect bigger than the mining industry today, because it was exporting millions and millions of dollars in today's money of exports, and it was basically seal skins.
In London, seal pelts are in demand. Seal oil lamps light British homes and streets. The city's craftsmen use the finest seal fur and felt for luxury goods.
So the skins were used to make shoes, really strong, good quality shoes. And the fur was used to put on things like hats, which was this new craze that was taking Europe by storm and taking Britain by storm. And it meant that if you took a hat that was worth, say, a bare 2 shillings and put the fur on it, all of a sudden that same hat was worth more than £1. So there's a massive amount of profit to be made if only you could get the skins and the furs around the world to market.
Money from sealing is crucial to the Australian colony. But Americans have been bullying sealers up and down the coast. They want all the business for themselves. Now they're here for Morrell, with a lesson in US diplomacy.
You looking for me?
The Yanks have bigger ships and more men.
How many of us it gonna take, you yucky dog?
And they ambush Morrell when half his crew is down the coast. They expect this to be easy. Their plan for anyone who stands in the way of America's takeover of the Australian seal trade is to make an example of them. A bloody example.
I'm gonna take that off you and strangle you with it! Shut up! Shut up!
Morell's best hope is that the rest of his crew will come to his rescue in time.
Hey, come over! Quick help! Over here! Back in the cave! Quick, shoot him! Get him! Get him!
The ragtag band of ex-convicts is still heavily outnumbered. The Americans drive home their advantage. But today they face local sealers who put their lives on the line and fight back.
Living through the hardship and understanding that you've got to fight for everything that you have and that you can't give up, because back then that was their livelihood. That was how they were going to survive.
Morell escapes, and his men fight the invaders to a standstill.
Leave them! Come on! Get the barrels! Let's go! Come on!
The locals lose their seal oil and pelts, but they've shown they'll battle ferociously for what's theirs. The Americans ship out, seeking other undefended seal colonies.
We had an export business right there and then, and we wanted to protect our turf. We wanted to protect that industry. We founded that. We knew that that was going to be an opportunity for Australia.
Yankee scums! Next time we'll have ya!
The seal trade, then whaling, fueled the colony's growth. Eventually, sealers' camps become coastal towns and cities like Hobart, Port Fairy, and Victor Harbour. Coming up, they're part of the greatest fighting force in the world, but they fear one man. His name is Pemulwuy. As the colony expands,
here we are!
Two cultures will collide in the bloody battle for Parramatta.
A warrior stands proud of who they are and will do absolutely anything to defend their land, their country.
There is something to fit every budget at Bunnings.
Aluminium fence panel, only $69. Water storage crystals, just $12.63.
Where you find a competitor's lower price on the same stocked item, we'll beat it by 10%. Lowest prices is just the beginning, that's our policy.
I'm here.
Your action and sci-fi fix are on 7+.
You've been waiting for this.
A very, very long time.
Streaming for free on 7+.
When you start your day with the banana, nothing can stop you. Because when you feel good, you feel good. Australian bananas.
March 1797. Parramatta is thriving, thanks to pioneer farmer James Ruse. The first Australians fight back against the expanding colony. Their leader is Pemulwuy, Bidjigal man, freedom fighter.
You want to attack?
Commanding the first full-blown attack on a township by an Aboriginal force.
What a warrior means to me is someone that, stands proud of who they are and will do absolutely anything to defend their land, their country.
To his people, Pemulwuy is a clever man, a warrior with mystical powers. To the colony, he's a rebel, a terrorist.
Go, run!
What happens next will decide who controls this land. And and set the pattern for more than 100 years of war at the frontiers between black and white Australia.
Coming! Lieutenant!
The colony is 4,500 strong. 2,000 hectares are now farms. Local indigenous peoples are driven off their land and their population decimated by the diseases the colonists bring with them. But they fight back under Pemulwuy.
Pemulwuy is a very interesting character because he does something that no Aboriginal person has had to do before. He invents his own politics in a way. What he has to do is unite these clans who've always squabbled over different things, you know, and been fiercely independent, against a common enemy, the British. And he does it through sheer courage.
Lieutenant! Lieutenant! Pemulwuy's coming in here! How far? A mile, maybe less.
Quick, barricade the entrance!
The name Pemulwuy fills the settlers with fear.
Straight through! Second on blocked in the centre!
In many raids, farmers have seen their crops burned, their livestock speared.
Robson! Guns from the armory! Jack, keep a lookout! They're coming from the north!
Pemulwuy and his men have already killed 17 colonists.
Behind the barricades!
The organised attack on Parramatta is a terrifying escalation for the settlers, who are still vastly outnumbered on the continent. But not all white men are on the colony's side. Escaped convicts join Pemulwuy's resistance.
So we ram it home?
They have stolen muskets, and they reveal to Pemulwuy the white man's magic.
Powder in the pan?
Gunpowder.
Then we fire.
Understanding guns helps Pemulwuy invent new strategies to fight the invaders.
The other day.
That demystification broke down the fear of the power of the muskets, and Pemulwuy gets very daring in how he takes on the colonists and almost seems to say to them, I'm not frightened. You can't scare me with that anymore.
If Pemulwuy can take Parramatta today, perhaps he can drive the colonists back into the sea. They're part of one of the greatest military powers the world has ever seen. But they are far from home and few in number. The winners of this fight will hold this land. The losers face death and dispossession.
You want to hurt us? Here we are!
Launched from his woomera, Pemulwuy's spear can kill from 60 metres. The colonists' guns are deadly from 80 metres, but they're slow to reload. Two technologies, invented thousands of years apart, go head to head. Parramatta is close fought. Pemulwuy is hit, but fights on. Neither side gives an inch. Until the great warrior falls. He's shot 7 times. Without their leader, his men retreat.
out! After them! After them! Spread out! Over there! He's alive.
But Pemulwuy defies death.
The mythology that emerges after he's been shot by these muskets, the absolute high watermark of British technology, when that can't bring Pemulwuy down, the esteem and the myth around him only grows.
That night, bullets still in him and wearing leg irons, Pemulwuy escapes to fight on.
Is this guy really a magic man? You know, is he invincible? Can't he be killed?
Pemulwuy fights the settlers for another 5 years. When they finally corner and kill him, the colonists take off his head and send their trophy to London. But killing Pemulwuy does not bring peace. For the next 100 years and beyond, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, Aboriginal people will fight to keep their ancestral land.
Pemulwuy was one of those stories that is inspiring for not just Aboriginal people but for all Australians, that if people are going to come to our shores and try to take away our freedoms, it's definitely worth something to stand up and fight against.
Pemulwuy is not the only Australian to take on the British crown. Coming up, defiant, drunk, out of control. This is Sydney, 1807, but one man's determination to impose England's will in Australia will ignite rebellion. It's all over. Run.
I'll see you swing for this.
What I want.
Beth is doing damage with the bat.
Crowd is up as well.
Rachel's got it covered. What a cat. Lanning's store gets hot, and Ash is just on fire. The shooter's taking aim again. How about
Yeah, look at this one. Selfie stick, work boots, vacuum cleaner, peanut butter.
Can't blame them though. It's heaps less on eBay.
Peanut butter. Fancy face cream and sunnies, eBay. The exact same face cream and sunnies, heaps more expensive. Rose Cooper. Rip off Roz.
I'm Roz Cooper.
Hey, what's up? Sup? That's what's up. That's what's up. Sup?
If you hate sunscreen, you're going to love this. Introducing Neutrogena Ultra Sheer. With its dry touch, non-stick finish, and weightless invisible protection, it's the most unsunscreeny sunscreen ever.
1807. Sydney is a wild frontier town. Amongst its 3,000 settlers, convicts and soldiers, brawling, prostitution and drinking are rife. Rum is the colonists' booze of choice. They also use it to buy and sell just about everything. Some make a killing, and many live better than they ever dreamt of in Britain. People like soldier John Davis, rum trader, family man. He's built his own house, but on land he doesn't own. And now a new governor threatens to destroy his home and his livelihood. Governor William Bligh. 10 years ago, he lost his ship, the Bounty, in a famous mutiny. He's short-tempered and foul-mouthed, but also brilliant and driven.
William Bligh was a strict disciplinarian, very legalistic.
Get me the correct eviction notices now!
He obviously had a below-average interpersonal skills, as the mutiny on the Bounty demonstrated, but he stood up to these crooked military officers.
Bligh plans to clean up what he sees as a cesspit of corruption, to destroy the rum trade, and to demolish illegally built houses like John Davis's family home. What Davis and men like him do next should see them all hang. They will directly challenge the vision England has for Australia.
England was determined that Australia would be this utopian, agrarian, non-commercial, bureaucratic state. We were an experiment, but the settlers wanted to experiment in their own way. We didn't just want to grow wheat and process convicts. We wanted to be enterprising.
But the colony's new enterprises are held back because there's no money. Incredibly, it's a deliberate strategy by the authorities in Britain.
New South Wales doesn't have any currency to begin with because the geniuses in the colonial office don't think that convicts and ex-convicts will need any money. When convicts turn up, they're from the largest city in the world at that stage, and they're part of a modern world, and they want to live modern, and they want money to buy clothes and grog and to be able to gamble. So from the very jump, you need to start using other things to stand in for ordinary money.
Rum stands in for money. It's crucial to Sydney becoming a booming centre of South Pacific trade and turning many ordinary colonists into wealthy men. When Governor Bligh takes on the rum trade, almost all of Sydney becomes his enemy.
Today is the day, folks. We get rid of Governor Bligh. I want to get signatures. Please feel free to enjoy the ride.
John MacArthur, a powerful businessman and effective organiser, and Army Commander Major George Johnston see an opportunity.
I think the people are ready. I think the people are ready. Yes, indeed they are.
They start a petition against Bligh and his reforms.
Where do I sign?
John Davis is on board from the start. And the King's man faces another mutiny.
The more signatures we get, the quicker we get him out of office. Are you with me? Yes! Please drink some more rum, enjoy yourself, and sign the petition.
If the rebels lay a hand on the governor, it's treason. And the penalty for treason is death. January 26, 1808.
Your Excellency! Governor Bligh! Join yourself, sir!
Less than a year since Governor Bligh moved against the rum traders.
You two, upstairs, you two, through there.
Major Johnston marches troops into Government House. In the face of mutiny, Bligh could order every one of the rebels to be shot. But all the guns are with Johnston. The governor destroys what his enemies might use against him in court.
This is treason, sir. I'll see you swing for this. Take him away. Johnson,
Under house arrest, Bligh plots his return to London.
I will go no further.
British justice. Johnston makes himself acting governor. His de facto wife, an ex-convict transported for shoplifting, is now the colony's unofficial First Lady. Johnston has taken a massive risk. He returns to London to face trial for mutiny. The court convicts him, but rules that he acted under extraordinary circumstances. Johnston escapes the gallows and jail. He's sent back to Australia and allowed to keep the small fortune he made from the rum trade.
The Rum Rebellion is significant because it's the first time we send a governor packing, and Governor Bligh represents all the outmoded, obsolete ideas of what this colony is meant to be like, and we won't have a bar of it.
I don't think the Rum Rebellion was a revolt against the authority of England so much as it was a revolt against the despotic nature of one man, being Bligh. But unwittingly, I think they did start a process of undermining the social power of England in Australia.
John Davis and his family rebuild their home. For colonists like them, Australia is a land of opportunity. It's a place where people make their own luck. And in the century to come, some will be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams.